What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we are really back. I mean, I think the count today was 85 games that involved an FBS school today. Like week 0 was a little appetizer. It was a great appetizer, but this weekend we are really back. And I mean, it's 11:50 here on Saturday night. We still got a couple more games going right now. We got 2 more games, Sunday and Monday. So week 1 is not even over yet, but we're going to go ahead and recap the bulk of it. This will be our normal cadence doing this Saturday night, doing our reaction episode. And we got a lot to talk about, but I mean, most importantly, it's just good to be back.
Oh, it is. It is. This whole weekend has been, I mean, from Thursday night, having multiple games Thursday night that were good, Friday night to just having games at all, even if they weren't that good. And then today, it's just been, I mean, if you're a true college football fan and you had less than 2 screens, what are you doing? Because that's all I got to say. Like, I tried to keep up, and it was like at times I needed a third, even a 4th screen to watch what I was trying to watch. So it was just a fun-filled day at every time frame.
Like you mentioned, I mean, 2 screens was probably not enough during at some points during the day, depending on your interest. But you and I as college, fans of the college game, a lot of games going on we had to keep our eye on. I know tonight, I was going between 5 games tonight that I was interested in, and it was a lot to keep up with. But Daniel, let's start our reaction with, let's just go to the marquee game, which ended not that long ago. So top 5 matchup in Columbus, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Daniel, on our preview episode, you took Notre Dame in the points. I took Ohio State to lay and to cover. And I was very confident in Ohio State laying cover in the spread. They do lose Jackson Smith and Jigba in the first quarter of the game. Ohio State wins by 11. Still a big win, still a top 5 win at home. 1-0 is better than 0-1, right? Daniel, what would be, it's week 1. So I feel like week 1 is full of overreactions. Do you have any overreactions to this game that maybe we can bring those back to home?
Well, my overreaction from the first play was that Notre Dame is more explosive than Ohio State because, Notre Dame had like a couple plays and just moved the ball on Ohio State's offense. Meanwhile, Ohio State wasn't moving the ball. But, my first overreaction for this game I'd probably be worried about the Ohio State offense. But we both know that defense is salty for Notre Dame. And then, it was more encouraging than anything that Ohio State could win a game like this against this kind of opponent. Notre Dame tends to do that to people where they just get them in a box and they play them close. That's why I took the points, when we were looking at this initially. And it kind of played out the way I thought, where Ohio State would be in control and then kind of take over a little bit later. I did think it'd be higher scoring than it was. But, Ohio State, man, down the stretch at the end of the game, Mayan Williams, who'd have thought that, we're not talking about Travion Henderson, who, had an okay game himself, but Mayan Williams just putting the, team on his back as far as that last drive goes, and really just, getting some tough yards, running some clock, and, giving that extra lead where it was no longer in doubt. They were ahead by 2 scores.
My overreaction would be that Ohio State's not a top 3 team in the country. I say that, and again, I don't think that is a true statement. That would be an overreaction to watching this is, wow, they're not as good as we thought they were. And watching this game, that was my overreaction, is like, they are not as good as I thought they were, because we joked on our preview episode that I wrote down a score that I then didn't say on the pod, because I was like, I don't want to be embarrassed if it's not this big of a blowout. But I wrote down like 48-20, where I was like, they're just gonna, I said Ohio State's gonna arrive and score 45. That was my mantra for this year. Buckeye Jacob, that died on week 1. But I think I walked away impressed with both teams. Notre Dame did impress me with how they showed up and how well they were prepared to defend Ohio State. Uh, Ohio State will walk away with still very impressed because they got punched in the mouth. Ari Wasserman talked about this. He tweeted about this earlier tonight, but to get punched in the mouth, lose your best receiver early in the game, and then kind of play a different style play and win the game was impressive. So like first half stats, Notre Dame had outgained Ohio State 180 to 150. Right here, passing yards 128 Notre Dame, Ohio State 99, not very good. Time of possession 16 to 13, and that was what Notre Dame needed to do to win this game, was like keep the ball out of Ohio State's hands, capitalize on their mistakes, wait for them to mess up, hold on to the ball, run the ball, do that. Ohio State comes out in the second half, outgains them 246 to 72. They held the ball for 19 minutes, Notre Dame's 10 in the second half. Ohio State just did what they wanted, what Notre Dame wanted to do, and did it really well. So I walk away impressed with, you got punched in the mouth, your game plan got changed completely. You ran with a different game plan. And then I'll also call out both lines of scrimmage looked really, really good for Ohio State. But I walk away impressed with both teams. I don't think my power rating will change a little bit with at least Ohio State, which we'll get to. But I had them at number one. I will not have them as my number one team in my portion of the ranking come Monday night after our last game's in. So, but Notre Dame, I mean, like, this is a fun matchup. After the day of football we've had, we needed some good games. The nightcap capitalized on some good games. Great top 5 matchup. So really impressed with both teams. You know what? Let's do it. Let's go to Atlanta. From a great game to a not so great game, depending on if you like blowouts or not. Most people don't. Georgia, 49, Oregon 3. Georgia covered. So we got that pick
Certainly.
right. I said 41-17 before the game, and I thought I was a little high compared to most people, Daniel, but I was a little low compared to the reality. I mean, what do you walk away with from Georgia? How about an overreaction?
Overreaction is that this team is better than they were last year overall, and that they could win. They could win another national championship. It is just 1 week. I do, you got to factor a lot of stuff in, but I mean, that offense, we've talked about it a little bit in the offseason just because of obviously all the tight ends where it's just obvious how many playmakers they have, but the running backs can both catch the ball and can all make plays. And I mean, the receivers, people sell them short because of how good the tight ends are, but the receivers, it's just like this ball's not hitting the turf. Like, everybody's catching the ball, and the offensive line, I think, is one of the best ones that Georgia's going to have in recent history. And there were still times when Oregon was busting through the offensive line, and it just seemed, Stetson's just quick, so he could just get out of it and go somewhere. And, you and I have been following this for a while. Kirby's been trying to get a dual threat quarterback. He had one last year, obviously, with Stetson, him coming back this year. This is what he wants his offense to be, just because the mobile quarterback can cover up so much for you. Stetson was very electric today, very, efficient. And, I think Todd Monken, called a phenomenal game. So it's just one of those things where everything is kind of hitting together, and you got a bunch of veteran dudes who play together on offense, and everybody knows their assignment and they get after it. So, it was very impressive to watch the offensive side of the ball.
My overreaction is Georgia's the best team in the country. After a win like that, I mean, you play an opponent that was ranked 11th by the media. We didn't quite have them power rated that high, but this is still a top 25 football team that Georgia went out and beat by 46 on Saturday. So I think a non-overreaction is that this team is very, very good. And I think this kind of at least secured in my mind that Georgia, I think Georgia wanted to be this, and we talked about them being on the same tier of an Alabama, and that, hey, we thought that Georgia could lose a lot of NFL talent and come back and still be a tier 1 football team. I think this showed that. They started a couple true freshmen on defense that were elite on Saturday. The offense might be the strength of this team. That being said, the defense didn't give up a touchdown. And so the defense that lost, 27 draft picks, didn't give up a touchdown on Saturday. So really impressed with Georgia. I would like to publicly apologize, at least this week, to Stetson Fleming-Bennett at the fourth. Daniel, he looked like a guy who got number 1 reps all off season.
Yeah.
Hard to believe this is the first off season he got number 1 reps. 368 passing yards. That is his career high. Previous high was last year in that SEC championship game lost to Alabama. Georgia's average last year was 250 yards through the air per game. They threw for 440 tonight. So this is a different Georgia. This is a different style play than we saw last year. So I'll be interested and excited to see what they do the rest of the way. But what a statement from Georgia here in week 1. Other big game in our eyes, Daniel. Well, not just in our eyes. Other big game of the weekend. Florida and Utah. What a game. This was my game of the weekend. Well,
yeah.
Backyard Brawl is up there. This one had everything, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Utah, a top 10 team. Florida, you and I think is a top 25 team, but unranked, they come in the swamp. We both took Florida plus the points. I think you said Utah by less than 3. I took Florida outright. Florida, man, Utah had the chance. They get inside the 5 to punch it in, and an interception in the end zone to seal it. I mean, you could see the camera shaking on the TV. That stadium was losing it. This is what makes college football fun. Florida walks away with a huge upset. Daniel, what would be your overreaction to Florida's upset over Utah?
My overreaction would be that, well, I almost don't think it's an overreaction, but I mean, the Pac-12
is done?
Pac-12 is done.
I don't even think that's an overreaction.
It's like, as I was trying to say it as an overreaction, I just am trying to think of a path to where the Pac-12 can make the playoff now. I mean, it's
10-2.
Do what now?
You think Florida's going to go 10-2?
I don't. But they have a much better chance to have a really good season. This win does a lot for them. The confidence, and then going into week 2 against Kentucky, that's a big game. They need that one as well. They need a lot of these, but that one's a big one. But, I mean, for a new head coach to be able to tout that his first game he beat a top 10 opponent, regardless of the situation, is great for the program as a whole. Cam Rising played a phenomenal game. That last pick, obviously was just, indicative of it. You're playing in a pressure situation on the road. That crowd, this is exactly the kind of game that Florida wanted, to keep the crowd into it the whole time. And, Utah was never a team that was going to run away and hide in this game. I thought it would be a little bit lower scoring than it was, but it just started to kind of click there towards the end for both teams. I remember thinking, though, and I don't know if you feel this way, Jacob, I think you do, but, about Anthony Richardson, we both talked about how this is a lot on his shoulders. He kind of felt like, the end of a basketball game where you're swapping scores and you've got the point guard that can just drive the lane and get a layup. That's what it felt like Florida had with Anthony Richardson, because when all things break down, they could just run like empty with the receivers and he could just scramble and get a first down, or roll him out. And then if there's nothing there, he just go pick up a few yards. So his legs are a big, big deal. And he is a lot faster than a lot of the people on the field. So it just is one of those things where I think at the end of a game like that, where you're trying to keep the ball and go down and score, I mean, I'd rather have someone like him as my quarterback that can just keep getting first downs, moving the chains, keep possession of the ball. I was nervous if they were going to throw the ball at that point with him.
You and I talked about it in the preview. I thought the MVP of the game would be the Swamp, and they played a huge They played a huge part in Florida's win. Yeah, in a one possession game, I picked Florida because I'm going to trust the team at home getting points that has the best player in the field, and that's 15. He made some plays tonight, Daniel. He showed some inexperience at times, but man, when it came down to it, he made plays. I think an overreaction I have is Anthony Richardson goes to New York City at the end of the year. And the thing is, I think if he's in New York, then Florida has had a 9 or 10 win season at that point. I think they would have had to, right? Like Louisville was still at like 9-3 whenever Lamar won it. ESPN showed it, I think, 27 times during the broadcast that he was number 12 on Mel Kiper's board for the draft. It's the same thing with like, I put the over under at 4.5. How many times we were going to see that Stetson Bennett was a former walk-on in the Georgia game. Anyway, he showed why he's a top 20 prospect for the draft. That's for dang sure. He looks so smooth when he runs. That's like, it's not like he looks like he's gliding, but he's so big. That's where I think he's different than like a Tebow or a Cam Newton. He just glides. He's really good. So huge win for Florida. I don't think you're off on saying the Pac-12 is done, because again, I don't think Florida is going to go in 10 games. You're going to be looking back at the end of the year where, I mean, let's say Florida finishes third in the East, and it's like, all right, Utah's won the Pac-12, and it's between them and like a one-loss SEC non-champion that's not, and it's like, this puts them behind the 8 ball. They're not done. It puts them behind the 8 ball. So a huge win for the Gators. Daniel, let's kind of go rapid fire here. Let's see here. App State UNC.
Yeah, that game. Goodness, Jacob, watching that, phenomenal noon game to just have on to kind of get your appetite wet for a full day of college football. But goodness, it was just score. App State gets up 21-7. I'm starting to think, wow, I think, we have those separate picks on the side where I got UNC. It was just a pick 'em straight up. And I picked UNC just thinking, oh, yeah, they'll probably win this game. And I started feeling really bad about the pick right there. Of course, UNC then goes and scores, 34 unanswered or something like that. And then it's like, oh, okay, this game's over. Well, no. It was like every time it seemed like one team was done, they just kept going. And UNC holds up at the end with a 2-point conversion attempt by Chase Bryce, which, man, he gave every last ounce of heart trying to reach across. And it was the one time the defense stood up for UNC all night. So,
I mean, literally, I'm looking at their drive chart. App State punted once, turned over on down once at the UNC 30, threw an interception. That was it. That was the only drives that did not result in touchdowns. What an insane game. I flipped away from this. I think UNC was up by 14 late in the fourth. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing score updates and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And boom, the fact that both teams scored a touchdown in the last 30 seconds of the game, that onside kick ran back for a touchdown in less than 30 seconds, App State drives back down and scores. Anyway, that was an insane game, a fun game for college football, like regional rivalries. Please.
I just love that UNC traveled to Boone for that game. It's like App State's a big enough deal now where home and home is a deal. It's not just, oh yeah, they're coming for a paycheck game or something like that.
These ACC teams got to stop doing that because they're going to get in trouble. But this is not, look, you make schedules, either go schedule, if you're going to get beat or have a close game, go schedule Oklahoma. Don't be scheduling App State for a close game. We love it as college football fans, obviously. I think regional rivalries are a ton of fun. Pretty sure it's a 2-for-1. I think that's what they all did, was 2-for-1s with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You know what? Let's keep it with an ACC versus a regional rival here, Daniel. NC State, ECU. Another 1-point game between a team that's supposed to be, he projected second in their division in the ACC and going up against a group of 5 foe. So college kickers, man.
Yeah, this one was tough. It looked like, NC State got up early, not by a lot. They just kind of stayed at about 7 points ahead the whole game. They'd be up 7-0, then 14-7, and then they got up 21-7. I remember thinking, all right, they're going to put this game away. And then ECU goes down and scores 21-14. And I was like, all right, I don't, we'll see if there's anything to this. I had this on a second screen, so I wasn't listening to the live commentary. I had the volume off while I was watching another game. And then they ended up scoring a touchdown and then missing the extra point. And I'm like, all right, well, this one's over. I can turn away. And I turn away, and then all of a sudden I see that there's 9 seconds left, and ECU has the ball in field goal range. So, of course, I flip back just in time to watch them miss the field goal. So, hate it for that kid that missed the extra point and the field goal. But they had multiple opportunities to put this game away and, beat not just an ACC team, Jacob, but an ACC championship contender. We were talking about them, in the Atlantic. Outside of Clemson, they're the pick in the Atlantic this year with what Wake's kind of got going on with Sam Hartman.
Everyone's saying first potential 10-win regular season. For NC State, almost kind of blew it right here in game 1 with ECU. So that was a fun one. Daniel, let's go to – I'm going to take us to Cincy, Arkansas. So that 3:30 window, I hope a lot more people got eyes on this game than Georgia, Oregon after a while. But I'll be honest, I thought it would be a bigger win for Arkansas. I did lay the points. You laid the points as well. But I think I walked away more impressed with Arkansas. I did not have more impressed with Cincinnati than I was disappointed in Arkansas. I did not have Cincinnati in my top 25. I just thought losing all these players would be a big deal. And I think it is. This is not the same team as last year. But, man, they fought hard. Like, they fought really, really hard. Bryant to come out and throw for 325. Now, this Arkansas defense does let you do a lot. And they kind of do the Georgia thing where they'll play some red zone roulette. They'll just drop 8 and let you have everything underneath. They're just not going to let you have explosive plays. Balanced approach, but I mean, a lot of they average 6 yards per play. So I mean, offensively, Cincinnati that's really good. Arkansas averaged 6.3 yards per play, 12.5 yards per completion for KJ Jefferson. I thought he played a phenomenal game. This is one of those games where when you have 2 really good teams, number one, Arkansas running the ball allowed them to kind of play keep away from Cincinnati for a little bit. That was a big difference in this game. They had 224 rushing yards to Cincinnati's 111. And then kind of the Florida thing, man, like best player in the field, number 1 for Arkansas. And KJ Jefferson goes out 18-26 for 223, 3 touchdowns. That's a 69% completion percentage. Nice. And he goes and runs for 62 yards as well on 18 attempts. So best player in the field is number 1, and they won the game by 7. So impressed with both teams, though. My rating will actually change. I will be moving Cincinnati up after this game.
Yeah.
And so this is where wins and losses do not mean everything. Like how you play matters, and so I will be moving Cincinnati up in a loss.
And can we just keep the Luke Fickell praise going? I mean, that's really what I'm coming to. Like, dude, this is the type of team, Jacob, you and I mean, writing was on the wall. It's like they just lost all these NFL players. He's a good coach. They're going to get back here, but it's going to take a little bit for them to develop. And it seems like they're right back at the table, ready to be the class of the American. And, if he stays their head coach when they head into the Big 12 in, 2 years? I mean, who's to say they're not going to just run the gamut there with him as the head man? Because it seems like he's recruiting the right guys and he develops the right guys, and it's not any one thing. It's that they're a good football team, and he just keeps having good football teams. They tackle well, they know their assignments, they play hard, They know how to win games. Even in a loss, it just felt like they did the little things to give them the chance to win. So I'm very impressed.
You talk about coaching too. Halftime adjustments were made in this game. So they were down 14-0 at half. They come out of halftime, score on their first drive. Arkansas answers. So 21-7. Cincinnati answers back 21-14. Arkansas fumble. Cincinnati touchdown. Now it's like they just kept answering with Arkansas. So halftime adjustments made a big deal in this. They scored 17 in that third quarter that kept them in this game. So great coaching adjustment by Luke Fickell and his staff. Let's go back to Thursday night, Daniel. Couple games Thursday night. We'll start with the earlier, and I say less. I'm not even going to say that. This is a very, very fun matchup. I was going to say less prestigious matchup, not the less fun one. I think this is the more fun matchup. But the backyard brawl, regional rivalries, man. That's what makes college football great. 38-31 Pitt over West Virginia. Thank God for that hook with that 7.5. And I'll say this. I really thought we were going to get an outright win here.
Yes.
We were on the right side 1,000%. Even with the hook, you could say, oh, it was close, wrong side. No, that pick six was a freak play.
It was in the hands of the best receiver for West Virginia. Dude, so just to kind of reset it a little bit, you could tell that I think the best unit on the field was the defensive line of Pittsburgh, because they were coming through that offensive line of West Virginia throughout the game.
Which we said will be the difference in the game.
We expected that to happen. What we didn't expect was JT Daniels to kind of overcome that with a lot of quick passes. It did seem like he hit a lot of receivers in the hands that were dropping balls, specifically the tight end. That one was really egregious, and then a couple over the middle. But they did have some plays where JT extended it and was able to find some people, find different receivers. But Ford Wheaton seemed to be the class of the receivers, at least. It's unfortunate that, he catches those 2 touchdowns and it seems like he's got another first down on his hands, and he tips that ball and it gets pick 6 to Pittsburgh. But all that being said, Keaton Slovis had a pretty good game for Pittsburgh, but really it just was a team win on their side. I felt like everybody played well. You could tell there's a talent difference. Pittsburgh is better as a team, as a whole. Wanted to shout out CJ Donaldson, running back for West Virginia. He's a true freshman. I think that it's one of these things, especially playing a rivalry game in week 1. If they played this in week 8, I think you probably get a healthy dose of Donaldson, more so than what happened in this game, because after a couple carries, you could tell he was the best running back, but it was like West Virginia didn't know that until later in the game when he's still averaging 12 yards a carry. So they kept feeding him the ball. He ended up having 125 yards, 17 yards a carry, and a touchdown along the 44. So that was impressive, but the fans were just amazing. And, it looked like at one point Pitt was going to run away with it, and then West Virginia came back, and it looked like West Virginia was going to go put it away, and then all of a sudden Pitt tied it, and then the pick 6 put them ahead. So it was just like a lot happening at once. But yeah, I didn't realize they're only 70 miles between these two. I knew that they were close, but that's ridiculous that this hasn't been played in so long. We need this one to keep coming, because it has definitely been of interest this week for me.
11 years was way too long. Let's not let it go 11 years again. What do you think Bryce Ford Wheaton's listed height and weight is? I just look this up.
I think he's tall. He's like 6'2", 6'3".
6'3", 225. That's a big dude.
Yeah.
That's why he was winning a lot of those one-on-one balls. I was like,
well, I like that where 0, because you could just, it's like a target. You just throw to that 0 in the middle of his chest.
And he did. And then that was when the pick 6 happened.
Yep.
So that worked out nice. That poor kid. He had a phenomenal game before that. Daniel, I will end with Purdue, Penn State Thursday night. We talked about it. Both of these teams needed this game won. both coming in with lofty expectations. I think I picked Purdue to go 8-4 this year. Penn State, I was very lofty with going 10-2 with Penn State this year. Was almost ruined in game one. Very close game, 35-31. Penn State wins. Early on, Sean Clifford gets hit in the knee. Looked pretty dirty to me. Drew Alar comes in. I mean, I was like, what? I thought at some point this season, I'm excited to see Drew Alar in mop-up duty because he's second string. And in game one, and I was like, then Clifford came back and then he went out again. And I was like, he's done. We're going to get Drew Alar for the rest of the game. Recruiting nuts loved seeing Drew Alar.
Right.
But outside of seeing the touted 5-star number one quarterback in the 22 class, again, I thought this was like Ohio State, a great example of a team getting punched in the mouth and then just showing that they're better. I mean, the 21 second quarter points to let Purdue come back. And then again, Penn State scores 14 in the fourth quarter just to put the nail in the coffin. That final drive was impressive. Sean Clifford, somebody, I think him and Stetson Bennett are similar. They are good college quarterbacks. And Sean Clifford led his team down when they needed a final drive to win. He did it. He threw for 4 touchdowns, 282 passing yards, threw that INT. But I have confidence that Penn State can go win some tough games this year. Again, this was on the road. Their schedule coming up, they needed this win. They got Ohio next week. They go to Auburn. So I think facing this adversity early was important for them because I think they're going to go face adversity on the road at Auburn because I don't think Auburn's going to have a loss yet when they play. So big deal when your team's still undefeated going into Jordan-Hare because that crowd's going to be into it. And then in a couple weeks, Northwestern looks pretty good. You go to Michigan. You got Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks. So you needed this win before going on the road to Auburn. And then, that gauntlet there in the middle in October. So impressive Penn State. Purdue still has everything ahead of them. This doesn't hurt there going 8-4, and they can still win the Big Ten West. So great Big Ten matchup. Man, first Saturday college football. This feels good. We still got games going on right now.
And our picks aren't done yet, but so far, Jacob, you and I are both, 5-1?
5-1 with 1 to go.
We had different losses.
Go Tigers.
You picked Penn State, and I picked Purdue. And then I took Notre Dame with the points, and you had Ohio State. So both of us got one on each other, but 5-1, and then we're both on LSU tomorrow night. So hopefully for our record's sake, LSU wins so that we can just have a phenomenal record, especially a start to the year. We want to look as credible as possible for the season. 5 games above 500 to start the season. You need that kind of first strong start, because that way when you're going through the rest of the year and it's like 4-3, 3-4, 4-3, 3-4, you got a cushion. Exactly.
Week 1 real important.
We still have Monday night, which Clemson and Georgia Tech, which most people will scoff at. I will raise you and say it is college football. We get a game on a Monday night that we wouldn't normally get, and we get to look and see what Clemson is, because a lot of people are like, hey, you're not going to get to tell anything because it's Georgia Tech. But after last year, absolutely you will. Are they able to punish Georgia Tech?
We're going to find out who QB1 is.
Yeah.
I really do think we're going to know Monday night who the quarterback will be for the rest of the season.
And we're going to be
pretty quick
doing our preview the following night. So if there's anything crazy that happens these next 2 nights, we'll still be able to hit it in the preview episode when we record going into next week.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed week 1 of college football as much as we did. Actually, we're going to go and watch Oregon State, Boise State, Washington, Kent State. Oregon State, shout out, up 24-0 on Boise State at halftime. Hey, that is my Pac-12 North, second in the Pac-12. Well, I guess there's no more divisions, but this is my 4th best team in the Pac-12, Oregon State Beavers we're talking about. So, I don't know, fire at the chainsaws or something.
Leave it to Beavers.
Leave it to Beavers. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He's Daniel. I'm Jacob.